Hi, I'm Doug, your tech support representative here at Atlantic British. In this video we're going to talk about a common issue with the 4.0 and 4.6 Bosch engines, which is the coolant regulated heater plate that's on the bottom of the throttle body. These leak quite often. Matter of fact, in this case what we're going to do is we're going to show you one on this Disco 2. This is an 02, where the heater plate is located on the bottom side of the throttle body, just under your throttle plate, and you can see the buildup of coolant right on the edge there, which is telling me we have a leak. And we've had to add some fluid to this vehicle over a couple weeks, so we knew we had a leak, and that's where we found it. So what we're going to do is we're going to remove that throttle body, and we're going to install this kit, MGM 000010K. And what you get is the actual replacement plate, the gasket, and the 3 screws with lock washers that hold them in place. We're also going to need a throttle body gasket. We want to replace that after removing the throttle body. That's an ERR 6623. This is basically all you're going to need to do to fix this, and it's a relatively easy fix. So first we're going to start with removing the intake tube, and the throttle cables, and then the breather hose on the back side of the throttle body. So to remove the intake tube, we're going to run these 2 clamps off that hold the mass airflow sensor body to the top of the air filter housing. There's just 2 clamps there. We've disconnected the electrical connector for the mass airflow sensor, which is just 2 tabs on top. You squeeze and push that off. Tuck that to the side. We have a clamp here that we've loosened that attaches the tube to the throttle body. And then we're going to take this last clamp off for the idle air control motor. Now these little squeeze-on clamps, just take a small screwdriver, and there's a little cut in the end of the clamp. Just get up underneath that and lift up a little bit, and they just pop right off. We'll slide that up there and put it so hopefully we don't lose it. Give it a little twist and squeeze, a little twist and pull. And that's off. On the throttle cables, you're just going to bring the throttle plate wide open, and you're going to sneak the cables out through the openings that they give you. You can line up the cable to the opening and slide that right out. And we tuck those to the side, get them out of the way. Now the last 2 items, which are on the back, we're going to show you is the breather hose and removing the electrical connector off of the throttle position switch. Alright, so we're going to remove this, have a clamp here just like we had on the idle air control motor. We just get under that little groove and pop that off. Spread the clamp out so it lets go of the hose. Slide that down and remove that from the side of the throttle body. And then last but not least, we have an electrical connection right here. And we're just going to move that little tab away from the connector and pull down on it, and that's off. Alright, so now all we need to do, we have 2 lines, and these go directly into the cooling system. This outer one goes all the way across to the overflow tank. The inner one will run across and then down into the front of the lower intake manifold. And we really don't want to break the system open and drain all the coolant out just for this. So what we're going to do is we're going to take 2 small pliers, and I'll show you the 2 different types you can use. And we're going to clamp these hoses off before we remove them. What we can use is either a small needle nose vice grip, and you can purchase these basically any place that sells a good tool. There's also a pair of pliers that is primarily designed just for pinching off hoses. You'll notice you got a nice smooth edge, so you don't have any serrations that are going to cut into the rubber. And then once you squeeze it down, it clamps on and holds on. And it's just as easy to release by pulling the handles and spreading them. So what we'll do is we'll go with the small vice grip. We go right into the corner of the rubber hose. We don't want to go too far up because you don't want to catch this plastic tube. These become hard and brittle, and we don't want to break that. And we just adjust that so it just pinches that shut. If you get a little bit of leakage, it's not a big deal. We're just concerned with having to open up the whole system. So if we can get through the mung that's developed on the clamp, we're going to back that clamp off. We got that broken loose, but we're not going to remove it yet. We're going to take the second tool. We need to sneak in there so that we can pinch off the back hose. The reason we want to do that is because if we pull off the outer hose without clamping this off, what coolant we have all the way through here is going to push out and make a mess. So now that we have that clamped off, it still wants to fight a little bit. And then we just go in and we loosen up the inner clamp. And then we pry this off the same way we did the outer. Alright, so we have the inner hose off, the outer hose is off, all our connections. So now we're going to take the throttle body off, and that just involves four bolts that have 8mm heads. You can use a 5/16. There's 2 on top, 2 on the bottom. And once we take those out, we'll just give the throttle body a little pop to break it loose, and it'll be off in our hand. So we have all 4 bolts out. We just give it a little pop to break it loose from the gasket. Now's also a good opportune time to clean out the back of this throttle body. You'll see the normal varnish buildup that gets up in there, and over a period of time that can actually build up to the point where it affects your fuel economy and performance. So we get a little carburetor cleaner or some spray that with a petroleum distillate. You could even take a rag with some mineral spirits, that'll also wipe that out. But we want to clean off the whole back of this throttle body. So here's a better view of what this plate looks like in hand. You can see all the coolant buildup around there, so obviously this has been leaking quite a bit. Now what you're going to need is the 5.5mm, either a nut driver or a socket on a ratchet. We're going to take those 3 bolts out, and then we'll remove the plate, clean it up, install the kit, and then put it all back together. And there we have it. It's off. What we're going to do now is we want to clean this up as best we can. We probably got gasket material on there. And you can take a small scraper, or if you have any of these new little high-speed grinders with the Scotch-Brite on it, or even just a Scotch-Brite pad would be enough, just to clean that up so that we end up with a good surface. Alright, so now we have our throttle body cleaned up. We've cleaned up the surface area that we're going to put the new plate on. And we did a little wipe out on the back of the throttle body, get that a little bit cleaner. Some more on the front as well. Just get this cleaned out fairly decent, and then wipe off the surface that the new gasket's going to go on. So what I prefer to do, and I've used this stuff quite a bit, I know some guys have had problems with them putting new ones on and they would still leak, and that has to do with some of the irregularities in the surfaces. So to make up for that, I use this product made by Permatex I call High-Tack, but there's a number of different products out there that'll do the same thing, and all they basically are is a gasket tacking material, and it goes on in a spray, and you just spray it on there a little bit. And we'll just set that right on top, and we'll let that get tacky for a few minutes before we put the plate back on. And that's basically all that's going to really do, is we're going to put the screws back on. Now what I want to mention is, and you're going to notice, these aren't like a conventional lock washer. These are basically a spring washer. In other words, they arch, and that when you tighten the screw down, the arch of the spring actually holds tension on it to keep them from coming out. Plus they've actually included adding some Loctite right onto the base thread so that these won't back off. I usually find what works best is that when you install them so the high part of the arch is what makes contact with the screw head. So we're going to do that ahead of time before we put them on. And don't worry about getting any High-Tack on your fingers. A little bit of mineral spirits or anything that'll break down a distillate will wipe that right off. You don't need anything harsh. Half the time you can wipe it right off with a rag, get the majority of it out of there. Okay, so we'll set 2 of the screws in place. I like to start with the middle one and get it lined up with the hole. Again, this is a 5.5mm. Just going to run those 2 in there to help locate the 3rd hole. And we're just going to bring them down snug so you can just feel them bottom the head out. And they're going to go on a little tight, and don't worry about that. It's because of the Loctite on the threads. stuff has definitely got some resistance. It definitely adds to the strength of the holding power on these. So then we'll get these in so that everything's snug and down. Okay, and we just give a little bit of torque there just to lock these down. You don't want to go crazy when this is why I like the nut driver as opposed to with a ratchet with a handle. You can over torque these a little bit. With the drive handle you really can't. Hit it good and tighten in. So now we're ready for assembly. Now before we do that, we're going to go back over to the intake manifold. We got to get the old gasket off and clean up that surface as well. So let's start with the top. This is a reasonably stiff gasket. You can actually, if you're careful, you can get this off here without leaving a lot of material on the intake. It lifts right off there. And we'll take a rag and make sure we got a good flat surface all the way around. You don't want an air leak, because what can happen down the line is eventually you'll end up with a lean run condition because you'll be drawing air in through here. Yeah, it doesn't hurt to reach inside and get a little bit of that buildup that's in there as well. So what we're going to do now, at this point, throttle body goes back on that way. So we're going to put the gasket on from the backs, make sure all 4 holes line up, and we're just going to slide in the top 2 bolts. This will just make it a lot easier when you go to install the lowers. Slide that back over where it belongs. Okay, so we got those in a few threads. Now we'll take our socket and our extension and sneak up in there and get the lowers in. You just want to get it started by a couple threads just to hold it in place. Alright, so we got all 4 started. Now we're just going to run those in and snug them up. Alright, throttle body is on. We ran the 4 bolts in, nice and snug, nice and tight. So first thing we like to do is let's get those coolant lines back on. And we're going to do the inner one first. So I'm going to sneak things around here a little bit, get that hose back on. And again, the inner one's not too bad. This is a solid rubber hose all the way to the intake, so you can fool around with it a little bit, twist it around. You're not really going to hurt it so much. We'll try to work it up with our fingers, but I think still we'll get it with a pair of pliers, and we'll use those to push that hose up in place. Gets a little tight, but it can be done. Alright, so that hose is on. We're going to sneak the clamp up. We want to tighten the clamp up before we put the outer hose on, because the outer hose is going to block off our access to this clamp. Keep a close eye on it. You want to make sure you put that clamp back in the position that it was. You'll see the mark on the hose where it's sat before. And we're just going to kind of hold it in place with our thumb and run the screw in until we feel it good and tight. Again, we don't want to over tighten. You don't need to muscle it. You just need to get it tight enough where when you're done, you'll check the clamp to see if it spins or if the hose itself moves on the nipple. If it does, you need to tighten a little bit more. If it stays put and doesn't move, then we're good. And then the outer hose, we're going to do the same thing. Here we have a little better access. And we just lift up, get the clamp in place, and we tighten down on that as well. Alright, so we have our clamps on, hoses in place, and now we're just going to remove our clamps. As I said, on this one set, you just need to grab the handles and separate, and they open right up. These are very handy if you're going to be doing a lot of work with coolant hoses. These things save a lot of time and a lot of damage. Next, we'll put our cables back on. You just get your finger up underneath this. You're going to lift up, and then we can hold that in place while we slide the cables on. As I said, you have a little opening in there. You twist the top of the cable so that the cable lines up with the opening, and give her a little wiggle, and we're in. And the same thing with the front cable. Got to make sure you get it all the way in and that the cable and the little barrel on the end is in both holes. We're good there. And now we put our connector back on for our throttle position sensor and the hose. Next is our connector for the throttle position switch. It just runs up. We're going to lift up till we hear a click. Make sure it enters into the connector. There we go. And then we slide our breather tube back on. And this is the squeeze type clamp. We get that in place where it was. Let that sit there, and then all we need to do is just squeeze that tab and that tab together with a pair of pliers. And then we listen for the click, and we know we're on. There's that. And now we reinstall the intake tube. Alright, usually find works easiest. First, check the inside of this, the air filter housing. There's a big rubber O-ring in there. And we're going to rub our finger on there just to get a little bit of our oil on that, just so it slips in easier, and you want to make sure that it's seated fully before you put the tube back in. That slides in there. That pops on and seats. And that pops on. And again, we have a squeeze type clamp. You can push these up a little bit where they should hold. Well, this one doesn't want to. So we squeeze that together a bit and put our pliers on. And click. That's on. You want to make sure that's good and tight. Essentially, you want to make sure that any of your connections on the air tubes after the mass airflow sensor are untight, so that there's no air leaks, which can later on create a run lean condition. Sometimes they can get so bad it'll even turn the check engine light on. You'll get the lean run codes. So we want to make sure that we're on good and snug. And we'll hook our two clamps on. And down here somewhere is our connector for the mass airflow sensor. Stick that on there, and we'll run that in until we hear that click. Throw the line back in there. Okay, and you're done. So we've taken care of our coolant leak, and you might need to add a little bit to your overflow bottle. You really didn't lose that much, but you want to make sure that that's at the proper level anyway. So when you find that water leak and you're ready to change that heater plate on the bottom of the throttle body on your Bosch equipped 4046, either the Range Rover or the Disco, call any of our knowledgeable salesmen at 1-800-533-2210. And thanks for watching.